Yes. So you are able to see the slides, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you remember, so last class, I know we have discussed about these waves, okay, which is a very important thing. So we have seen, mathematically also, and from the data itself. Of course, the data shows so many waves, but mathematically, how many waves are there? If you remember. So how many types of waves are possible? If it is infinite medium, say. So an infinite medium, not boundary. There is no boundary. If it is infinite, say. So how many waves are possible? No, infinite medium. No boundary. So how many waves are possible? These equations I showed you right yesterday. How many are possible? See, in infinite medium, how many waves are there? So we have how many types of waves? You have only P wave and S wave only. Two types of modes only are there. But if you are having a boundary, say now what happens due to this boundary, that is the free surface boundary or whatever, then you will get some extra waves, okay, which we call as surface waves or Rayleigh waves or something like that. Variety of types of waves comes into picture, okay. So please remember, if the medium is infinite, no surface waves, okay, only will be having P wave and S wave only, okay. So anyway, so this we have seen, and we have seen the differences also, variety kinds of things, and we have seen P wave means, what is the mode shape also we have seen. So like if the energy is moving in this direction, say the particles also moves in the same direction, okay. Then I know we have also, so if you see any seismograms, okay, so if you want to observe these type of waves, you should, where you should put your seismograph, nearby or far away?
So far away.
So far away only you can observe these phases. If you are nearby, what happens? The time taken will be, very small. So, the P wave arrival time, S wave arrival time, so they may mix actually. You will not be able to see all these numbers. So you have to go far away, 1,000 kilometers or 2,000. So then you can observe, nicely, you see all these phases itself. Okay. Apart from this, you will be having several phases also. PP, yes, 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 yes. So many things will be there. SP, PS, so many waves will be there, we will see later on also. So just for time being, this is sufficient, okay. So this is for the shear waves, and then this is for the Rayleigh waves. So these are surface waves, so they exist only due to the boundary conditions, okay, because of the surface. So the surface waves, what happens is, they will be amplitudes will be more near the surface, but as depth increases, they will go to zero. You will not see these type of waves itself. So you can, that's what we yesterday we discussed, Rayleigh waves, in which component, you will see these type of waves, in transverse. So this also we have seen in our last class, okay. So the advantage is, instead of putting instrument in north direction, east direction kind of a thing. So the main advantage is, you can you put the instruments which is radial direction and then transverse, you can see all these type of waves. But if you see northeast and southeast, west side, then also you will not be able to observe all these waves itself, okay. So this is a classical the example. So now to describe the earthquakes, epicenter and other things also we have seen. But as already I told you, right, epicenter, these are all it's fine, the conventional things. But when the large magnitudes, say when the fault size is so large, it is ridiculous actually. Later on I will show you also some of these things itself, okay. So how to find out, this, the epicenter also I have shown you. So how many stations are required to find out epicenter minimum?
Three.
Three. So and your epicenter should be in between these three. Okay. So this is a very, the important thing. Triangulation technique, we use, and then we find out this epicenter source. So this is a classical thing. Our IMD or USGS, any websites, they are all using these type of techniques itself. And now to describe earthquake size, we have said there are two things are there. One is from the intensity, which is a subjective scale, and another one is magnitudes, which is a objective scale itself. So now, last class I told you modified Mercalli intensity. So these all subjective kind of a thing. So depending on the site, so you have to give our the rating kind of a thing, and then you draw these type of contour maps, say. So then you can draw this intensity maps for an earthquake itself. And in India, which is official agency to give MMIs? Yeah. Which is official agency?
Geological Survey of India.
GSI is the official agency. Okay, so they are the one who are responsible for this isoseismals. So these maps, we call them as isoseismals. Okay, so isoseismal, this word say, is nothing but it is just a contour. So if you join all the places, say, with the 6 intensity, then this is an isoseismal actually. Okay, these contours. So we call them as isoseismal maps also. So like for example, for Gujarat earthquake, so this is an isoseismal 10, then this is isoseismal, say. So 9. So inside this isoseismal intensity will be 9. Inside this isoseismal, so it will be somewhere around 10. So they draw these type of the nice shapes itself. Okay, and now these shapes say. So now these shapes depend upon like last class also I told you. So the main these shapes they will depend on what type of things. Suppose if this happens in a desert, so what do you expect? No. What type of isoseismals will be there in a desert, or where there are no buildings are not there, say? No. What happens?
Zero, so there won't be isoseism.
So that is the most the important thing. Sometimes the isoseismals also they depend on the fault orientation also. See, this Gujarat earthquake was caused by this fault. It is not epicenter. Okay, some 80-kilometer long fault. So sometimes their orientations also will be located. You follow right parallel to faults itself. This is also very important thing which we will see later on. Okay. So the main negative thing about isoseismals, not negative, but it is highly dependent on the population, the buildings and other things also. So you can have 2 earthquakes with same magnitude but different the isoseismals. And I told you, right, if earthquake same magnitude occurs in India, same magnitude occurs in America, our isoseismals will be different, their isoseismals also will be different. So these MMIs, so these are intensities actually. Okay, so they reflect the built environment also, the built environment of the country or the construction practices. Okay, so the construction practices of any country, say, they all depend on this isoseismals. So if the construction practices are hopeless, say, then isoseismals will be very high. But if the construction practices are very good, say, then the intensities may be very less. So even if you see the recent earthquake, like you compare Gujarat earthquake, which is a magnitude 7 point, or Killary earthquake, if you take 6.3 is the magnitude of Killary, then if you see in America, Parkfield earthquake, there are earthquakes are there which have the same magnitude 6.4 or 6.3. But if you compare the intensities, American things are very, very lower. But whereas in India, Killary earthquake, if you see so much of damages you can see in Killary. Okay, all the magnitude is same. So that reflects even the built environment, and all those things are mixed up in our intensities. So although people say it is outdated or something, but everybody likes this the damages only. As an engineer, they prefer you see these type of damages only instead of going for some objective scales itself. Okay, so fine. So the same thing only. So now we have seen the subjective scales. Okay, that is intensity. Now we will see the objective actually. Okay. So it is like a more mathematical the kind of approach, objective scale. So that is so here, so the objective, this is a word, you see the magnitude comes actual. So to describe an earthquake you can do via intensity, which is subjective. Now another way is objective scale, which we call it magnitudes. So magnitudes, so this is a old concept only, but you follow right nowadays everybody uses this one. So it is related to your size of the waves that are recorded by the seismometers. So this concept of magnitudes came only recently, that is only in the 1900s or 1910 or 1920, when the instruments started coming only, this concept of magnitude came into picture. Okay, so this is all based on instruments. So if you don't have any instruments, then you can't find out the magnitude. But without an instrument you can draw the isoseismal map, because isoseismal map is based on the damages. Okay, and now isoseismals are very, very important. See, in the olden days, like in our, like you followed, right? We have in India so many large earthquakes are there. So in the olden days, that is during 1897 or the very old things, instruments was not there, but intensities was reported by many kings and others. So you have to find out magnitudes from the intensities only. Okay. So anyway, so this magnitude concept comes from instruments. If no instrument, you can't find any magnitude itself. And of course, since they are instruments, they are much more accurate also. Okay. So this is also in defining this earthquake size itself. So now let us see how the things varies. Now magnitude, the basic scale what they use is logarithmic scale. Okay, not a linear scale itself. So 1 unit, say, like if I'm having a magnitude 5 and magnitude 6 actually, okay, or 4 and 5, 1 unit, if it increases, so the seismic waves amplitudes, how much times it increases? Now you can see this here. Amplitude will increase how much? 10 times actually, because it is basically the amplitude. Now if you try to write in terms of energy releases, say, so 5 magnitude will be 30 times actual. Okay, 4 magnitude in terms of energy. Okay, amplitude will be 10 times, the difference will be there. Energy will be 30 times because of this logarithmic scale. Okay, it is not a linear scale. Generally 4, 5 you followed it, we think only there is a 1 unit only will be there, but amplitude will be 10 times, energy will be almost 30 times, or like that, it increases. So this is the most important thing about this magnitudes. Okay, so right now there are so many magnitude scales has been developed. Okay, so many are there. I have listed only 4, but there are many magnitude scales now. Also people are doing research. Like recently, last year one paper got published where they have developed a new magnitude scale. They started telling, these have a problem, and so many things are there. Coda wave magnitude, so many things are there. It is a big, you follow, right, mess. Sometimes, you will be confused what you are talking also. Okay. So now the classical one, say, which is widely used, which was used in the olden days, was this Richter scale. Now also, people use this one, not in the seismologists, but newspapers, everybody, they use this Richter scale, this one. And even our IMD, say, Indian Meteorological Department, was also using this Richter scale. Even recently also they report ML only. Okay, in Gujarat also they reported ML. Now also they report ML, but recently they have changed them to moment magnitudes also. Okay, so now, so the 4 things which are widely used is ML. So this is one magnitude, body waves, then surface wave magnitude, and then this moment magnitude. And the one which is more reliable or the frequent nowadays is this moment magnitude. This is the one which is the one finally everybody is using. Okay, so now we will see how they are, what is the advantage, what's the disadvantage of all these scales itself. So so that's what, so earthquake magnitude concept you followed, right? So the main why this concept originated was objective measure, because intensities are all subjective, so they wanted to have an objective, and then they wanted to use these instruments also. Okay, based on the instruments, say, so how do we find out the size of an earthquake itself? So this was the thing. Okay, the old scale, some Wadati in Japan, then Richter, say, Richter, in California, you followed, right? So he started this concept of magnitude. So it's a very old, this one. So what they have observed was, whenever you have a seismograph, say, so now, the peak amplitudes, if we say, suppose if I have an epicenter, earthquake has occurred here. Now I have a seismograph at 10 kilometer distance. Then I have a seismograph at 100 kilometer distance. Okay. So they observed. So what happens was, as the distance increases, the peak value decreases, and then they have identified these type of patterns. Or if the magnitude was increasing the magnitudes, then also amplitudes was changing. So they observed all these type of things from the experiments itself, and then they found out. So they found out this Richter magnitude. So peak amplitude basically. So if I'm having an earthquake, say, I have a seismometer here, seismometer here, seismometer here. It will record something like this, the wavy nature. So peak amplitude is nothing but the peak value, the maximum absolute value, basically. It may be on the negative side also. Okay. So maximum amplitude of A of t, or whatever you followed it. So that they call as the peak amplitude. So what he found out was, based on these observations, say, he developed this concept known as Richter magnitude, that is ML. Okay, so this is a concept, and he did this for Southern California, and on those days Southern California, they put instruments. By observing those data, he evolved this the concepts. So this was a logarithmic, as already I told you, this was the one which Richter developed, followed right long back. So this was the old, the Richter's chart. So he plotted all the data like we also do in civil engineering, right? Whenever you do the experiments, say, once you have all the data, we will do design charts. Like, our codes also uses this type of design charts. So he gave this type of design chart. So this was a distance. He plotted distance, okay, some 600-kilometer distance, and then the log of peak amplitude. So he took logarithm of the amplitude. So this amplitude, whatever you have observed here, so you take log 10, okay, of this peak value, say. So he plotted, he did some type of graphs, and then based on this graphs, he gave this type of curves, the design charts. So 6, then 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, like that it has actually. So now if you want to find out Richter magnitude, say, what you have to do? So let us say Gujarat earthquake has occurred. So now Gujarat earthquake was somewhere here. So now, you have an instrument, say, at Bhuj or maybe Ahmedabad or some other station. So you know the distance actual, okay, some 300 kilometer or 230 kilometers Ahmedabad city. So now you have a seismograph here, say, okay. So simply you take the peak value and then you take log 10 of this value, okay, and then you plot on this graph. So suppose if that graph, that one plots somewhere here, say, okay, and now what is its magnitude? Now you know the distance, you know the amplitude. So like that you have several stations are there. So you plot all these data points. Let us say all the data points, they go somewhere, you see, like this. Now what is the magnitude? Now what is the magnitude based on this chart?
In between 5 and 6.
Yeah, 5 and 6, maybe 5.5 you follow, right? People used to do like this, okay? And then suppose if it falls here, say, this range. And now what is the magnitude?
Greater than 6.
It's greater than 6. So this is what he developed, a simple design chart, like whatever we do in our engineering. So he developed this chart itself. But this chart is valid for, California data only. Okay, so he has done only for Californian earthquakes. So he developed this chart itself. So this was the, the first, you can say the first ever study to describe an earthquake with a simple number, that is the magnitude, okay, and it has a logarithmic scale. So this concept was done by this Richter itself. That's why you see he's a very followed at classical work, or very famous man actually, okay, this Charles Richter. So now he gave design chart also, he gave some equations also, he has given like this, some log, ML, he fitted some type of a regression. So if I have data, say, you measure the amplitude, you substitute amplitude here, you substitute distance here, and then, you will get the magnitude actual. So this is the classical formula you followed, right? Richter developed it in Southern California. Now people used this formula blindly actual, okay, even in India also. Yeah, our IMD also was using these type of formulas, long back. They used to have these broadband seismographs. Pick from that one, substitute this formula. They used to report this ML. Not only in India, many countries they adopted these type of formulas itself. Okay, so this was a very simple concept of finding the magnitude. But the only thing was it was applicable only for Southern California. But people have used this formula left and right everywhere. Okay. So now this, and then he one more thing here was, in these instruments also, if you see, say, several companies manufacture these instruments. So each and every company, they will have like instrument sensitivity counts, and that will be different. Okay, the same company instrument, if you take and record, you will see some slight changes here and there. So this Richter, he used this Wood Anderson seismograph. This was one of the oldest, the instrument. Some company used to manufacture, develop or something. So this was used by this Richter. So that formula is also, it is related to this seismograph only. So what he says is that if you want to find out Richter magnitude, you have to buy this Wood Anderson seismograph. So this data, if you do, he gets this, the values itself. So that is how, this Richter scale came into picture long back, some 1950 or 1940, during that time itself. So then this was in limitations, like, so this was valid for Southern California. And then it depends only on one type of instrument only. Okay, he has not checked his values with another type of instruments, and then this has not been professional. Nowadays nobody uses this kind of a thing. But of course nowadays in newspapers, they write Richter scale, Richter scale, Richter scale. They goof up everything. Moment magnitude also they write as Richter scale. Okay, and everybody, you know, what is the Richter scale? You know, like that they ask. But Richter scale is you know, already gone actual. Okay, so this also is was some of the limitations. So then you know, so then what happened was you see then the concept became, then instruments have come into picture, people started recording these data sets itself. So then I told you, right, previously we have seen the seismic waves. So everybody knows, you know, P wave, S wave, you know, Rayleigh waves will be there and other things. So then so why don't we use this information itself? Now what this Richter scale, if you see here, what Richter was, what was the distances here? No. So his scale is valid up to how many distances? How much distances?
600 kilometers.
600 kilometers.
600. Now, but most of the instruments, so now his data is all in the near field, that is up to 300 kilometer or something. So he has developed this, you know, the instrument. Now we have already seen when you are very, very close to the epicenter, say, so this peak value corresponds to which one? See, like now you are having a peak value here. Okay. This is what type of peak this is. This corresponds to which wave? Yeah. When you are which wave?
P wave.
P wave. See, last class I told you, right? P wave will have that high amplitude. See, P wave is the first wave to come on the seismograph. Not the earthquakes means what type of source it is? Shear or
Shear,
this one?
shear.
Then how come you will get P wave amplitude will be very high? So this amplitude is linked to which one?
Shear wave, sir.
Shear wave, of course, that is one shear wave. This one is there, but last time I already told you, when your instrument is located very close to the epicenter, say, can you distinguish between P wave, S wave, and surface waves? No. See here in this graph, can you identify these waves? See which is a Rayleigh wave, which is a shear wave, which is a P wave? Can you identify? Can you identify the phases here? PP, PS, SS, and other things. Yeah.
No, sir.
No, sir.
So if you want to identify the phases, what you have to do?
Increase the distance.
You have to put the distance. You have to increase the distance. You have to go beyond 1000 kilometers. Then only you can identify all these phases. So Richter's formula, he is taking near field some instrument. He is not worried about P wave, S wave, or Rayleigh wave, or whatever. Simply whatever amplitude you get, you simply take logarithm and then you get the magnitude. So this magnitude corresponds to which type of a wave, that amplitude has related to which type of a wave. If you ask physics based things, say, we don't know the, you know, the answer actual. So it may be a shear wave, or it may be a surface wave, or it may be Rayleigh, it may be love wave, it may be anything else also. Okay, so that was a problem, you know, with the Richter scale. So the physics was, you know, missing actually. Okay, but we all know from seismology, say, when you are going far away, you can identify all the phases, then you can find out the magnitude. So the concept was something like this actually. Okay, so what the people said was, you know, instead of using Richter's magnitude, say, you don't know what exactly you are measuring, you are simply taking the peak amplitude, but the peak amplitude corresponds to what we have no idea actually. Okay, so like for example, if you have a nuclear explosion, say, so nuclear explosion, what happens? Nuclear explosion, so how the time history will be? So P wave amplitude will be, you know, very, very high actually, then it will be very, very small. So this is a nuclear explosion, and now this is an earthquake. So in earthquakes, we already said that shear, Rayleigh, they will be dominant. So you have this amplitude. Now if I use suppose if both amplitudes are same, say, then the magnitude for this also nuclear explosion will be same. For earthquake also it will be same actually, because here can you differentiate between a nuclear explosion and earthquake using Richter scale?
No, sir.
Because Richter scale doesn't even you know, use this you know, compression, tension, or shear, you know, those informations will not be there. Simply you are taking a peak value, getting some number actually. So this was the problem, you know, which everybody seismologists followed, right? They faced. Suppose if there is a mining activity going on, say, or some you know, huge heavy equipment is going on, that also will get recorded. But you know, whether that is a real earthquake or, you know, whether it is a man-made thing, you know, it was very difficult actually. Okay, using this Richter's magnitude. So that is why reason, you see, people started migrating to other type of magnitudes. Okay, so this was, so now this concept came. So nowadays nobody uses the instruments which are very, very close to the epicenter. Nowadays, to find magnitude, people use instruments far away only, so that they can identify the phases. They can have a clear physics things will be there. So that's what we say. So now they use different seismic waves, we say, okay, to compute the magnitudes, and they are recorded at a distance of thousands of kilometers actually, instead of the hundreds of kilometers for the Richter scale, because you can identify all these phases. So that is the concept. So this is a concept. So this is a time history recorded far away, some 5,000 kilometers or some very very far away. Now here you can identify the phases. What is this phase? What type of wave is this? No, starting.
P waves.
P wave. Then you followed it. Maybe you may have a shear wave here. Then you followed it the surface waves actually. Okay, Rayleigh wave, or maybe of course it depends on the radial direction or transverse direction. So transverse direction you will see love waves. Radial direction, so you will see Rayleigh waves itself. Okay, of course this is a radial component he has done, so that's why he has done Rayleigh waves. So now people started developing actually. So now instead of taking the peak amplitude, say, so what people started saying is, they defined this quantity known as body wave magnitude also. So in body wave magnitude, what they do is, this is the arrival, the first waves which arrives, say they are the P waves. You take the maximum P wave amplitude itself. So then you take logarithm or something you do, so you will get a body wave magnitude. Then other group, what they said was, instead of going for P wave, you take surface waves actual, okay, which have very large amplitudes and long wavelengths kind of a thing. So you take the peak values here, and then you develop a magnitude. So this magnitude we call, as you followed it, the surface wave magnitude. Okay, so now right, this is in the Richter's magnitude. You don't know what wave it was. It may be a P wave, or it may be S wave, or it may be a surface waves. Anything might be. You have no idea in Richter's magnitude. But the magnitudes, the advantage is, what you are measuring. What physically, which wave is giving you the magnitude. Okay. So two waves came into picture. So body wave, then surface wave magnitude actually. So these are the two things, and they have calibrated with all the instruments also. So so now but the problem what happens is, so if you want to develop a scales, ideally you follow it. Everybody wants MB, MS, because earthquake is same. If it is the same earthquake, say, so its magnitude also should be very, you followed it same. Okay, but this is what we want actually. So whatever you do, like whether you measure nearby or far by or this or that, we want to have same thing only, but that doesn't happen now also. Okay, so like for example, the Turkey earthquake, say, so what was the surface wave magnitude? 7.8. Body wave magnitude is 6.3. Now if I take Taiwan earthquake, say, what was the MS? Can you see here? Surface wave is
7.7.
Body wave is
6.6.
6 point. Now for our Gujarat earthquake, say, any of you remember what was the magnitude of our Gujarat earthquake? You have to tell what magnitude also.
8.6.
8. See, for Gujarat earthquake, I don't know how many of you remember. When earthquake occurred, our IMD said its magnitude was 6.9. You followed 6.9, but our IMD uses what scale in olden days? During Gujarat earthquake also, what was the scale which our IMD uses? No. So it was ML. Okay. Now immediately after this 6.9 they reported. Then USGS you followed, right? They record so far away from the epicenter. So from their data they have given some 7.6 or something surface magnitude came into picture actually. Then people, after once earthquake occurred, data after looking at the all those aspects, say, so I think now it is 7.7 movement magnitude they have given actually. Okay. And body wave magnitude also, some number is there. You can search in Google, you follow, right? The magnitudes for our Gujarat also. So now the problem, what happens with this magnitude is, because you are measuring at variety of this one, so these scales will be slightly different actually. Okay. So that's what we say. So now, and of course there are some problems also are there. Like for example, if I have a deep earthquakes, say, they don't generate large, the surface waves. So MS is, you followed it, biased, for deep earthquakes actually. So this is also one, issue. So like, the surface wave magnitude has a problem. So where do deep earthquakes occur in India? Anyone you have an idea? Which place we have deep earthquakes? What do you mean by deep earthquake?
Focus of the earthquake will be
Now, how much deep it is? Deep means what is the relative number?
maybe 20 kilometers.
20.
More
No,
than
see, huh?
50, 60 like that.
No, it's more than 60 kilometers or 100 kilometers like that. So in India, where do this we will see these type of deep earthquakes?
Northeastern India, I mean,
No,
near
Northeast
subduction
India.
zone.
That is Indo-Burma. Okay, so Indo-Burma subduction zones. I will show you later also some nice photographs. So here you will see these type of large focus, some 700 kilometer, 500 kilometer also. You will see earthquakes. But in Himalayas, what is the depth? In Himalayas, what is the depth of the earthquakes? Any of you have an idea where the focal depth will be most of the cases?
10 to 30 kilometers.
10 to 30. It's mostly 15 kilometer like that. We have Uttarkashi earthquake, Sikkim earthquake. Now Nepal earthquake is there. You people can Google it. Okay. So what is the depth of Nepal earthquake? 2015, and you can tell us. Now in peninsular India, what's the depth? For Koina earthquake, we have Kilari earthquake, then Ongole earthquake was there, Coimbatore was there. So what was the depth of these events in peninsular India?
So 10 to 15 kilometers.
Kilari earthquake, what's the depth there? See, Jyoti, you are doing, right, Kilari earthquake simulations. What's the depth of Kilari or Koina?
So 12 kilometers, sir.
Okay, so fine. Anyway, others also you can just see in Google. Okay, so the depth is a very, very important thing. Okay, so now so our MS magnitudes, the surface wave magnitude in Himalayas, in our peninsular India, it works nicely fine. But when it goes to subduction zones, say where earthquakes occur more than 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers, these type of things, the surface waves will be amplitudes will be very, very small, because the material will eat away all the energy actually. Okay, so surface waves will be very less. So if you try to compute, although its magnitude may be very high, but because the surface wave amplitude is very low, so you may get MS as some 4 or something like that. But in reality, it may be a 6 magnitude or 7 magnitude earthquake. Okay, so this happens like some events itself. Then some earthquakes you followed it, they last longer than others, even though peak amplitude is the same itself. Okay, so like you see, you may have earthquake amplitude may be same, but duration may be more also. Okay, that also is another aspect is there. So that's why. So finally you followed, right? So which is the best magnitude, Richter or MS or MB? Which characterizes a real thing itself? Which is the best one?
Moment magnitude.
No, movement we have not yet come. Okay, so among these three, if you ask which is the best, right, it is very difficult. Okay, because you are measuring different things itself. I have just put this, you have seen, right, this elephant. Blind man you have studied, no, somebody touches, he says it's a snake, somebody says it is something else, but finally it is something else also. So this is a problem, you see, for this magnitudes. Okay, and another thing is magnitude scales. Basically, we can see also they all you followed it. Saturation also is there. So that amplitudes, after some limit they don't this one. So that saturation problem is there. So there is an upper limit is there. Okay, so this is also how large the earthquake is. The upper limit is there. So like surface wave magnitudes, say they can never be more than 8.2 to 8.3. So this also is another the big reason, the saturation and other things you see happens here itself. And then MB, say this body wave magnitude, it is whatever it, because earthquake amplitudes are the P wave amplitudes will be small. So generally it can never, it saturates actually. So 6.7 is the highest, although its movement magnitude may be 9, but body wave magnitude will be still 6.1 itself. So like you see, we have seen here, this is a graph. So this is 6.1 magnitude. You can see P wave amplitudes here very small. But whereas here also, if you see P wave amplitudes are more or less the same, but this magnitude was very high actually, 7.7, and you can see the time history, how they looks like. Okay, so there are so many issues are there, like how to estimate and saturation and other things happens with this scales itself. So this is what we say as a saturation actually. So this is how the body wave magnitude, and then it's ms, so they all saturate actually, they will not exceed some limit. Surface wave also saturates, body wave also saturates, even Richter wave magnitude also saturates. But you followed, right? So this they will not give you the true magnitude. What was the true magnitude of that earthquake itself? So like for example, the true magnitude is 8, say. What is the corresponding for 8 magnitude, your body wave magnitude is, you see, same actually. And if you are having 8.5 magnitude earthquake, say, its body wave magnitude is same. And if you have 7 magnitudes, its body wave magnitude is same actually. Now same problem happens for surface to magnitudes also, maybe for more than 8 itself. So this is what we call as, you say, saturation kind of a thing itself. So now but still people use this MB and MS itself. Okay, the reason why we use is to differentiate between a nuclear test and an earthquake. You are able to see this graph. So this was done for Pokhran earthquake actually. So Pokhran nuclear test. Right, in Pokhran 1999, you see, our government, you see, we have done that nuclear test in somewhere in Rajasthan. Okay, but newspapers, they wrote that it has not been detected, India was successful, this, that, but it was already detected actually. So there is an instrument in Nilore, okay, Pakistan. So this instrument has recorded this nuclear, this our nuclear this itself. Now if you see here, can you see the amplitudes, the earthquake and nuclear? Where nuclear thing, which waves has high amplitudes?
P waves.
Now why? So you can see the starting amplitude itself is so high actual. And which wave comes first? Now
P
which
wave.
wave comes? P wave. So P wave amplitude is very, very high for a nuclear test. Now when it comes to earthquakes, say, whose amplitude will be very high? Now P wave amplitude will be very small. So earthquake means you can have shear. So shear wave amplitudes are maybe Rayleigh waves if you are far away from the epicenter, say. So they will be very high actually. So now MB, MS say. So now if I find out MB of nuclear and MB of earthquakes, whose MB will be more? No.
Nuclear.
Nuclear will be there. And then you find out MS also, the surface wave. So surface waves will be somewhere here, the surface wave amplitude and surface wave amplitudes of earthquake. Whose will be more, earthquake or the nuclear?
Earthquake.
Earthquake. So now what people do is they take the ratio actually, MB by the MS. So if MB by MS, if it is more than 1, say, what is that? Explosion or earthquake? So which means MB is more than MS. That means amplitude of P wave is more than amplitude of shear waves or surface waves. Now MB is less than MS, say. What is that you tell? If it is less than MS, what type of things are there?
Earthquakes.
Earthquake itself. So MB, MS still people use to do this one. So in Colombia, right, that CTBT, comprehensive test ban, that is there at Lamont Doherty Observatory is there. They are the one responsible, right? I think our India, I don't know whether they have signed or not. So some CTBT they do, okay? So they detect these things and then they will easily identify whether which country has done. They can find out the epicenter by using 3 stations, and then they use MB and MS. Based on that, say, they will tell us you followed, right, the earthquake or something like that. And last year we had a huge explosion in Lebanon. Any of you remember? Last year in Beirut, you would have seen in WhatsApp that video was circulated, you see, near a port, I think some huge explosion. So that explosion was also recorded by all the seismographs in Israel. Okay, so now if it is explosion, say, they all have time histories also. You can search, even Berkeley laboratory, somebody has done the processing also. So you have like this actual. So based on that, they can tell whether it is an earthquake or I think it's a huge explosion, it was recorded far away. So by MB by MS, they can find out and they can tell whether it is an, this explosion or you see whether it is a earthquake itself. So MB by MS is still you followed, right? It is used in practice itself. Not only like one many examples are there. That Kursk one nuclear submarine was there. I don't know how many of you know. There also you see there was explosion happened in that nuclear submarine in Russia. It happened. Okay, so there are a lot of papers are there which you can see also. Okay, so still MB and MS people use for detecting nuclear explosions and earthquakes actually. So now finally in earthquakes say anyway we are not interested in explosions. So people so MB, MS, all of them different answers you will get, but they are good for some reason. But for some reasons you will get two different things, means it is a problematic. So what right now what people are using is this seismic movement actually. Okay. So this came in 1960s. One famous professor was Raki, K.T. Aki. Okay, he started this concept of seismic movement. It's I think 1960 he published a paper in Journal of Geophysical Research. It is available online. Any of you can download and you can see his classical paper. Okay, so there this M0 concept came into picture. So he gave he attacked this seismic problem from mechanics. Okay, so in mechanics say, so he started this movement actually. So movement means you followed, right? It is like force into the displacement kind of a thing, lever arm or something. So force is shear modulus multiplied by the rupture area. Okay, so this will give the force multiplied by the slip say. This will give you the movement actually. So F into D kind of a thing he used, and he got this concept of using the M0 actual. Okay, and the M0 means once it is movement say, you can give nice units, Newton meter, joules, energy, all kinds of things can be linked to this itself. So this is the definition of seismic movement. So shear modulus of the rock, whatever rocks are there, then rupture area, how much distance this has been ruptured, that cracks and other things, and then multiplied by the slip offset, how much this fault has slipped actually. So if you multiply these things, I will get my seismic the movement itself. So then to compare movement magnitudes, he used logarithm. So log of seismic movement multiplied by 2 by 3 and then minus 10.73. So he gave this type of a formula. He analyzed so many earthquakes and then you see he got up with this formula itself. So now if you want to find out movement magnitudes, you have to do more work actually, because you have to find out M0. So you have to measure shear modulus anyway, material property for the rocks like granite, other things rupture area you have to find out, slip offset has to be found out. So you multiply these three, say you will get my M0 itself. And once you know M0, you can find out this the magnitude itself. So but this is the one which is the widely used nowadays. Okay, everybody uses this moment magnitude. Okay. So this is what they say. So there are relations also are there. Like sometimes moment magnitude may be difficult. So if you know MS, say you can convert into MW also. So there are a lot of equations are there. So this is moment magnitude and this is another magnitude. Okay. So this MS is extra. This dark the red line. So this is a dark red line you can see here. So this is the MS magnitude. So now if I know moment magnitude 8, say, so I can pick from this graph and I can find out its equivalent MS also. So I find ML is our the Richter magnitude kind of a thing. So for 8.5 magnitude, so what is ML also I can easily find out from this graph itself. Okay, so some 7 or 6 it has a saturation kind of a properties are there. So people have developed these type of empirical equations like MS is equal to as a function of MW, and then MS to ML. There are so many relations are there. Okay, MS to ML, then MS to MB. So many things have been come into picture itself. So this is our magnitude summary. Okay, so magnitude, what is the concept of magnitude? So if you want to find out magnitude, so the concept is you have to put an instrument, you record the data, take the peak amplitude, you take logarithm of that and do some intercept, you will get the magnitude. And now how many magnitude scales are there? So many actual. Okay, Richter, MB, MS, MW, Koda wave, LG wave, so many magnitudes are there. I have not shown you all those things itself. But the one which is widely used is local magnitude, although it is outdated, body wave, surface wave, movement actual. So these are the 4 which still people use. Okay. So now and I have given you, like you see, local magnitude is basically ML. So this is an it is recognized. This has been reserved for local ML sometimes. Okay. And what type of waves it is? You are measuring the peak values. So the peak value corresponds to which one? Because instrument is located very close to the epicenter. It may be a surface wave or it may be a shear wave also. We don't know, because you cannot identify those phases, but not P wave. Okay, so because P wave amplitude, if it is more, then it is no more earthquake. It is a nuclear explosion. So Richter magnitude, the problem is physically which waves you are using. So you can't say it may be a shear or it may be a surface waves. Then body wave is very clarity. We use this symbol MB, small MB. Okay, and what type of wave amplitude it is using? It is based on which waves? P waves actually, and the periodicity also you can find out 1 second. If you take that small P wave data, find out its Fourier transform. Say it appears to be like this. Now surface waves, we use this symbol MS. Okay, surface wave magnitude, and surface waves are based on what type of waves? Now what type of wave is that? MS is based on Rayleigh waves. And its periodicity is somewhere around 20 seconds actual. Okay, and movement magnitude, say MW we use, and we don't use any wave there, because to find out movement magnitude you have to get this M0. Okay, so M0, if you want to get, you should know the rupture area, then slip and all those things, then only you can find out this movement magnitude. And of course, because you are using all the information, so you have to use like thousands of seconds actually, because the rupture area, it will be huge, and the periodicity will be somewhere around this itself. So now, so of course there are some, the empirical ways also are there to find out the movement magnitude. Like you take the data, you take its Fourier transform, you have to draw some lines, and we will discuss later on when we go to seismological model or something like that. So there are ways apart from, looking at the rupture area slip, you can find out movement magnitude from the data also. We will discuss, after some point of a time itself. Okay. So this is how so to describe earthquakes, so you have two types of descriptions are there. One is to describe the size of earthquake. Okay, so to describe the size of earthquake, two things. One is intensity, and other one is magnitude. Okay, so two things are there. So which is better, intensity or magnitude?
Magnitude.
Magnitude is better or intensity better? Yeah. So you are saying magnitude. Why not intensity? So you are an engineer or a seismologist?
So engineer.
As an engineer, what do you like?
Damage.
So engineer who cares, right? Engineers, we are not interested, whether magnitude is 9 or 10 or something, we are not interested actually. We are interested only in the buildings only. So engineers are interested more in the damages. So damages means intensity. Suppose you can have a 10 magnitudes, and if it produces some 3 or 4 intensities, we are not interested actually. But if there is a 3 magnitude, if it gives intensity of 6 or 7, so then engineers are interested. Okay. So anyway, which is better means, it's a very difficult question according to me. Okay, because both are required. As engineering point of view, intensity is very important for me, but physics point of view or seismology point of view, to understand, say, in detail, magnitude may be a better number. Okay, so both are required to describe our earthquakes. So fine. So now this is also very important thing. We will, very important thing for hazard analysis. How frequency? Okay, what is the frequency of occurrence of earthquakes? Very you followed, right? Important topic. So now if you go to USGS website, you can download this data very, it's a free. I think this is I think 30 years or 100 years data. If you see, say, so now if you see in that website and you do some histograms, if you plot all the magnitudes, you will find out that in the last some 30 years or 10 years data or something, if you take, so for 8 magnitude earthquakes, say, how many will be there? How many are there more than 8 in a given year? If suppose if I take yearly data, say, okay, in a given year, how many magnitudes will occur more than 8? No. So data shows only 1. Then 7 to 7.9, say 17 earthquakes will be there on an average. Now 6 to 6.9, say 134. 1319, 13,000, 1,30,000, then 13 lakhs or something. You will save this type of numbers. Okay. Now here one more important thing is all of you should know now the words great, major, strong, moderate, light, minor, and very minor. These are all very. See, people goof up the things. They say strong earthquake, and they say strong earthquake, and they say magnitude is 8 actually. Some people they say it's a moderate earthquake, magnitude is 6 also they say. So these words are all reserved. Okay. So now what do you mean by great earthquake? Nah. See, our Gujarat earthquake is what type of earthquake is our Gujarat earthquake? Is it a great or a major or a strong earthquake?
Major.
Major.
Major, because its magnitude was
7.7.
7.7. So Gujarat earthquake means don't call it as a great earthquake. We when we talk, you followed, right? When we write also, we don't care. We simply, strong earthquake. Gujarat earthquake was very strong. We say no, it is not strong actually. So strong means, so Kilari earthquake. So what type of earthquake is Kilari? See, Kilari earthquake. What was the magnitude of Kilari? That 1993 Kilari Latur earthquake or something.
It is strong.
It is strong. What was its magnitude? Somewhere I think 6.3. So it is a strong earthquake. Okay. So now we have in Coimbatore or some Koina earthquake. So Koina is also a strong earthquake. Okay. So this also, please since you are doing this course, so I expect all of you to use these words very carefully actually. Now Nepal earthquake is what type of earthquake is Nepal? 2015 Nepal. Whether it is a great, major, strong or moderate.
Major earthquake.
It is major. Its magnitude was somewhere I think 7.5 or 7.8.
7.8.
7.8. Okay. So these words, all of you from now onwards, when you are writing your answer sheets or when you're writing your thesis or whatever, so please be careful about these words. Okay. So these words are all reserved actually in the community. Seismology, if you are doing means you should know the differences and you don't use these these words in a routine kind of fashion. Now anyway, so now if you see these great earthquakes, how many great earthquakes are occurring on an average in a given year? Only one is occurring. So if you see these numbers, say what is that, you will find out 1, then 17, then 134, then 1319, then you see 13000. Now what is happening here? If you see these numbers carefully, what is that you can observe here? Very interesting things you can observe here. So 1 is here, then 17, then 134, then 1319, then you see 13,000. Okay, then 1 lakh, one more digit is getting added actually. You followed. Now similarly 1 lakh, one more digit. So what is happening? How they are getting distributed? How they are distributed? Like
Logarithmic.
Inversely proportional.
Inversely proportional, that is fine, but how what is the frequency?
So
Great means
logarithm.
117, 134, 1319. So one magnitude, when you are decreasing, say what is happening, one more digit is getting added actually, like you say 17, 2-digit number, then 3 digits, then 4 digits, then 5 digits, then 6 digits, then 7 digits. So what do you call these type of distributions?
So logarithmic.
They are essentially power law or logarithmic things. So if I take log of these numbers, say log 1, log 17, log 134, log 1319 and other things, so they follow a linear trend, but n will be exponential kind of a thing. Power law we say. Okay, so this is the famous, the Gutenberg-Richter power law. So earthquakes also, the earthquake sizes, they are all they follow this type of a power law distribution. So I'm showing here some, we will show later also some this one. So this was a relation which, for our IG car, okay, prototype, that fast breeder reactor, based on the data long back, it was done. So now here also, this is the logarithm here. So log of n, if you take, say, okay. So and if this is a magnitude, you can see they all very, you say, a linear type of a relation itself. So this we call, as you followed it, Gutenberg-Richter power law. So somebody asks you, how earthquakes are distributed? What is the frequency of the earthquake magnitudes? Say, so you should say Magnitudes are, power law exponential distribution, and their frequency, if you take logarithm, it follows this famous, Gutenberg-Richter law itself. The power law distribution, earthquakes also show this one. Okay. So this also is a very, the important, very important for hazard analysis. Later on, we will see it's a very important piece of, the information. It is valid on the whole world also. But if you take small sites like IGCAR or something also, you will observe the same pattern here also. Okay. So now apart from that, there are also some interesting things are there. Some earthquakes, they repeat on the same faults at periodic intervals. Actually, they are very, interesting things are there. So some earthquakes are there. Some fault will be there in US and in India also. Some places, people have observed. So that fault, what happens is this year it produces 6 magnitude, say. Then after that, it will not provide any earthquake at all. After some 20-30 years, once again it produces 6 only. Then it remains calm. Then after some point of a time, once again it produces 6 only. You followed, right? So there are typical variety, it's like variety people are there, no? So like faults are also variety things are there. So these are very different, they don't have a power law distribution or anything like that. So we call them as, you see, characteristic earthquakes actually. Okay, so people have observed also characteristic earthquakes. So these faults, they will not produce a 5 magnitude, they will not produce 3 magnitude, they will not produce anything. They will produce only one particular magnitude, and they will have a nice, the periodicity will be there. Okay, so these are what they call as characteristic earthquakes. So the characteristic earthquake definition means it is an earthquake which occurs, frequently this itself. So people have observed, and this is hundreds to thousands of years also it may happen. So this fault, like, every 100 years it, it remains, it produces earthquake, then it remains silent. Then after some time, once again same magnitude will come. So there are so many, paleoseismic and so many things are there. 1897 predecessor, so many interesting, things are there, studies are there, okay, which they have done in the Northeast and some places, even I think in the USA, New Madrid somewhere, I forgot. So there also there are a lot of papers are there on this characteristic earthquakes. So characteristic earthquakes, they don't follow a power law distribution. They follow some other you followed it, the complicated distributions. So now how do we describe this fault? So this is also very important. Okay, so now we have understood how to describe an earthquake by its size, magnitude, and other things we have seen. Now how to describe a fault? We all know, right? Earthquakes are basically caused due to the fault. So how do we describe this fault? So basically, mathematically, fault is what type of thing is there? What is fault? Mathematically, how do you define a fault? So mathematically, fault is a point, or it is a line, or it is a 2D, 3D, or what it is?
Plane.
Plane
It is a plane. But basically, whether it is a really plane, in reality, fault. See, the fault means that is where the material, if we would have done, right, advanced structural mechanics, plasticity and other things, if you see, fault is basically a volume, somewhere in the earth, say it would have reached the yield stress, and then plastification would have happened. You would have studied, right, all these things like mild steel, you would have seen the stress strain curves. So or for rocks, temperature will be there, so ductile, brittle kind of a thing. So basically fault is a volume only, okay, not a plane. In reality, you followed it. In reality, it is a volumetric where plastic flow and all other things happens. But in idealistic situation, everybody assumes the fault as a plane because it is little bit easy for us to understand because aerial things. So now how do you describe a plane? What is the equation of a plane? Straight line equation, everybody knows that y is equal to mx plus c. Now what is the equation of a plane? How do you describe a plane? Now in your coordinate geometry you would have studied. To describe a plane, what is the equation of plane? See, you would have studied, right, in mathematics. So in three-dimensional coordinate systems, I want to describe a plane. Now what is the equation of plane? And if this plane passes through the origin, say, what is its equation? Straight line, all of you know, right? Y is equal to mx plus c. If it passes through origin, say, we say y is equal to mx only. Now we are talking plane. So what is the equation of, what is the equation for a plane?
Ax plus by plus cz is equal to 0.
Is equal to 0 means that plane passes through the origin. Suppose if it doesn't passes through the origin, say, then
Instead of 0, there is d.
So ax plus by plus cz plus d is equal to 0. Like that you do. Now in your mechanics courses, advanced structural mechanics or other courses, how do you describe planes? Now that is one way you write equation of ax plus by. This is one way. Okay. Now what do you use in structural mechanics to describe a plane? You would have studied, no? That principal planes you followed. All those things you have studied, right? In 3D. Now how do you describe a plane? Cauchy's law, traction vector you have studied. How do you describe a plane? What do you use? You use this equation or you use something else? Yeah, principal planes, you remember. How did you describe a principal plane? You have done, right? Advanced structural mechanics, that stress tensor they give, no? 3 by 3. They will ask you to find out principal planes and principal stresses and principal planes. So that is also 3D only, and you are working on plane only. How do you define principal plane there? You used this equation, or what did you use there? Now, what did you use there? You have solved problems in advanced structural mechanics. But how did you describe a plane, principal plane? How do you describe a principal plane? Mechanics you have studied, right? No. Eigenvalue. Tell me.
Characteristic equation. Right.
That is for characteristic equation. If you solve, you will get eigenvalues. That is a principal stresses. Principal plane, how do you describe plane? How do you describe a plane in advanced structural mechanics? You used, what are those things? You used what? Direction cosines. All of you remember? Remember, or first time you are hearing this word? N1, N2, N3. You remember, right? What is the direction cosine? You know, no? That you have to normalize L1, M1, N1. Like that also we use. You know, right? Direction cosines, all of you.
Yes, sir.
So now how do you describe a plane in mechanics? Not ax plus by plus cy actually. We use a direction cosines. Okay, of course, all of them are same only. And if a plane is passing through origins, you have three unknowns. A, B, C will be there, or N1, N2, N3 kind of a thing also you see people use. Okay, so you can describe a plane in many ways. That equation or this equation. But in seismology or in geology, all our you followed, right? These geologists say they will not use direction cosines. They will not use this also. They talk in terms of angles. Okay, so this is how they describe. So they use this is angle, strike angle, but all of them are interlinked. If I know ax plus by plus c, I can find out direction cosines also. A by, you see, root of a square plus b square plus c squares. I can calculate my direction cosines, or I can take cos theta, sin theta, you remember that also, and I can talk in terms of angles also. So this is what we call as angles. Strike angle, they say. You followed, right? So one is a strike angle. The strike angle is measured with respect to the north direction. So if this is the fault, say, okay. So how much this fault is making an angle with the north direction gives me the strike angle. Then dip is the inclination of our fault. So how much dip? 90 degrees dip means how the fault looks like.
Vertical.
Vertical. If it is dip is 0. Horizontal fault. It is lying on the surface or maybe at some depth, parallel kind of a thing. So we use these type of angles: strike angle, then a dip angle, then we have another angle what we call as a slip angle actually. So the slip angle tells me I am showing you one side of the fault. On the top of the fault there will be another wall also will be there. You will have a movement actually. So how they are moving with respect to each other, that is given by this the slip angle. So we have phi, delta, then lambda. So these three are used actually to describe a fault. Okay, so there are several ways are there. You can use ax plus by and direction cosines or phi delta lambda. So if you know one, you can find out all these three also. But in geology or in our seismology or even in our course also, we will be using this you followed, right? Phi delta lambda itself for describing our faults itself. Okay. So anyways, I think you followed it. I will stop here because this will take a continuous class, and we can close this focal mechanisms in one go. Okay. So I will stop here. If you have any questions, you please ask. So stop recording.